Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Women's Maximum Fitness Podcast. Today is Tuesday, December 15. And I have with me today fellow Michigander. Do you hate that word?
I don't, I feel like we have Michigander, we have like our hands, the mitten, like we gotta be proud,
Yeah, where we're from, man. So IFBB Bikini Pro, Amy Landry. Amy, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. How are you?
Good. You look so Santa baby. You've got like the tree in the background. Should have had like a little hat.
I try. I know. I did festive. This is like my first year actually decorating for Christmas. Like, yeah. I feel like I moved so much that I like can't ever get settled somewhere, so I never decorate. So I kept it like a little subtle this year. So I have like this tiny little tree. I didn't anticipate for it to be so small, but this is what we got. I'm doing my best. So
awesome. I think that I've noticed a lot of people decorated this year and earlier who don't normally do. We're kind of trying to maybe expedite this year along and just get it over with.
I think so. Yeah. I think we're all like, the sooner we get this over with, like the sooner we can get back to normal. I also think like so many people aren't able to do what they would normally do. So they're trying to like bring any holiday cheer in any way they can. I've never decorated before, so I figured why not? So yeah.
We've always been last minute decorators. And then last year, I don't know, there was an article that I had read that it said that people who decorate earlier for Christmas tend to be more nostalgic and have a better like demeanor. And I was like, oh, I want to be happier. So I was like, we're getting.
I mean, it doesn't. Great. I mean, we'll take any kind of happiness we can get this year, right?
Yes. Yeah. No.
All right. Yeah. I decorated before Thanksgiving, I think.
Yep, we did too. We started the week before.
Yeah.
Yep, the week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I think I did too. Yeah, like a little slow, but I was like, I think I have to. I just have to do it. So, here we are.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, first I wanted to say, so this is not our first podcast together, is it, Amy?
It does not, no. We've been together on a podcast before.
That was a long time ago, and we aren't really sure what we said, so we would not like to disclose the podcast. And just know we didn't know each other, and then we met afterwards. And now we're like, so, I mean.
Yeah, I think you had made some treats for the Grand Rapids, I think.
Yep.
And yeah, those look really good. Those are very tempting. So I hope you keep doing that because I'm excited.
That show did not, I don't know if it even happened this year.
No, it didn't. They canceled it this year.
Yeah.
This whole year has been interesting as a competitor. I mean,
the whole year was canceled, really. It was. They canceled.
Yeah.
2020.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we could just cancel 2020 like altogether, it'd be great.
So I want to talk a little bit about your background and how you got into bodybuilding, in your road to the pro stage, and then just some stuff that I thought was really interesting that I think people don't understand, and that is how you've been kind of trying to figure out which direction you're going to go at this point because of the judges' feedback, because the average lay person would be like, oh my gosh, your stage pictures, you look awesome, blah, blah, blah. But there's actual criteria that, I mean, some things you can do bodybuilding and fix, and some things, take more time and so I thought that was really interesting. So we'll get to what your future plans are eventually. But first of all, what's your like athletic background? Do you have a?
So actually, I don't have an athletic background. I think that I never really played sports in high school. I danced for 9 years with a studio. My best friend's mom owned a dance studio, so I pretty much just danced. I did hip hop, jazz, modern, and lyrical, and I did that for 9 years. so I was very comfortable being on stage, like following choreography. Like our senior year, we all did like a solo dance on our own and kind of like came up with our own choreography, which of course kind of like flows into posing too, like coming up with your own posing routine as a pro and as an amateur as well. So I like tried playing volleyball like once. I'm just like, I think I'm a really competitive person, just like by nature, and I'm not very good at sports. And so I just didn't do them because I didn't think I would do well at them. And so I basically was just a dancer for a really long time, and I never like picked up a weight in my life at all until like 2013. And I actually tried to go to the gym like many times with either like guy friends or boyfriends at the time, and I would get so intimidated and like scared of lifting to the point where, I kid you not, I like bought a treadmill because I was like, all I'm gonna do is cardio. Like, I'm not gonna go to the gym and lift. Like, I like psych myself out. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna lift this time. Like, I'm gonna do it. And I would get there and I'd be like, no, like no. And then I ended up like walking on the treadmill for like an hour. So I'm like, no, like I'm just gonna buy a treadmill. I'm not even gonna do it. And so I just like did cardio, some body weight stuff, and then like Planet Fitness became a thing, and it kind of made it like more socially acceptable for people who didn't really know what they were doing in the gym to go to the gym. And I like kind of started lifting in 2013 at that point, but I didn't like know what I was doing like at all. Like I had no idea. And you see these guys training, but like as a female, like I can't really train that way a lot of the time. And those aren't the aesthetic goals that I have as a female. And so at the time, the only real like resources to learn like how to lift was like YouTube and Instagram. And it was like all from other like fellow competitors who, I mean, now a lot of them don't even lift anymore, or don't even compete anymore. And so, I mean, that's like really where like I got like my start being athletic and being in the gym, was just like trying it out, not knowing what I was doing, and using social media as a way to like learn different lifting techniques and like all of that.
So do you think, like, I feel like, because it was about 10 years ago that I started getting interested in, like, I started watching men's bodybuilding, but you know, they all had like their magazines. We had our magazines that had like the little pink dumbbells and that type of stuff that isn't even applicable. The sort of the of social media really allowed you to see what some of these other female competitors were actually doing versus us trying to translate what these big guys were doing into what we wanted. I mean, not that, you know, you could do what the big guys are doing and not end up looking like the big guys, but as far as your category too, there's more body part specific rather than full body workout type stuff that you need to.
And I feel like bikini was a really good way for people who wanted to be fit, like active and like fitness, but didn't necessarily know or want to get that intense with it. And so like for me, following different bikini competitors was a very easy way for me to get into lifting and say, and obviously like, you know, people say, I don't want to get bulky, like I don't want to look like that. And like what it takes to actually look like that, like once you're in it, you're like, oh, okay, like I get it now. Like at the time, it's like, okay, those people look how I want to look. They're doing like these things. And so I'm going to do those things too, because that's the way I want to look, like aesthetically as a female, you know?
But you know,
so it kind of made it more relatable. Yeah.
But you know, now, like you'll take, like I've seen you take Scott McNally through and you kicked his ass. Like, you know,
I actually did that 2 weekends ago.
Right. So it's a hard, I mean, I think originally we thought, oh, this is a lot of like a girl workout is a lot of kicks and all this stuff. But then you realize like, no, we're doing hardcore glute hip thrusts with a barbell and, you know, and squatting and all the other stuff.
Yeah. But like as a beginner, like, you know, like you don't realize that those things will give you like the physique that you want. And I mean, they do look very intimidating at first. And so for me, the only resources on social media, which is obviously like being the age I was, were the competitors, the bikini competitors. And so, you know, it obviously was an easy transition for me to say, okay, well, they're doing this, you know, like, why can't I, you know? And like, that was kind of my transition into bodybuilding, was I was following all these people who were lifting the way that I was, and I fell in love with lifting. I mean, that's like obviously where like my underlying passion is for bodybuilding. Like, I love training, like I love lifting.
Yeah.
You know, and so it could kind of seem like natural to go that way, at least try it, especially because I had like history of being on stage and like coming up with, you know, like dance routines. Gosh, my dog is coming up with like routines and things like that, and so like it was pretty easy for me to at least try it, you know, try competing, just see what happened, you know.
So when you first stepped on stage, did you have, I don't remember seeing your first pictures. How long had you been training? Did you have something substantial?
I mean, compared to now, no. But I mean, I'm sure, like, as you know, the look of bodybuilding has changed drastically for every division throughout the years. Like, it just naturally had a progression towards like a more muscular physique. So, I mean, my first competition was 5 years ago. My first competition was the Great Lakes Ironman, September of 2015. That was like my first show ever. And so, I mean, from 5 years to now, I mean, if you look at Bikini, Miss Olympia, the look has changed so much.
Yep.
And so at the time, like, we will let those photos stay buried, but like at the time, like, I think I had a pretty good amount of muscle mass. It just, the maturity wasn't there. I think I really only lifted for about a year, maybe, before I jumped into my first prep. But because I was a dancer, and like, not to discredit like any person who's been successful at bodybuilding, but I think being a successful competitor does require a certain amount of like genetics. And like, I think that I just, because of my history in dancing, because of my genetics, my body was just like naturally shaped very well for the bikini division. And then I had to add the muscle mass on top of it. So at the time when I first started competing, I did have the necessary physique for it. And then like my body just kind of progressed as the division did. My stage photos though.
Well, I wanted to ask
my posing, woof.
I wanted to ask you one thing, but first I wanted to say, so one of the reasons I always ask people what their athletic background is, because dance very much counts for, I mean, it's athletic, you know. I always ask because that ties into epigenetics. So whatever physical sport you have been doing a majority of your life, it does build that foundational muscle. So if you've got somebody who does gymnastics or does, you know, did track or whatever, you know, you got Miss Figure Olympia coming from a track background, or a lot of people have sport backgrounds, and that muscle is kind of the foundation of it. The seeds are planted when you're younger. So yeah, you went in there already having something to build off of, like the basis.
So like like my lower body was like naturally developed just from dance, and then to this, I mean, my upper body was a struggle. It's still a struggle. That's, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into that, but that's like always been like my critique. And so, I mean, and the posing at that time is also very different than it is now. And so, I mean, I think my body just kind of fit naturally with the body, like the bikini division, but like very well from the beginning, just because of like my background in dancing and genetics. So
yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you something. I don't remember what, so it's okay.
But yeah, so like that show, I actually, like, I had that show, you know, like you can compete in true novice, and then open qualifies you for like national shows. I actually had no intention of even doing open at that show, because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I look like a crazy person. I mean, if you look at those stage photos, I'm literally doing the splits on stage. Literally doing the splits on stage.
Like way far apart. Yeah.
Oh, wait, like, I'm like, how am I standing? Like, how am I actually like standing straight on stage right now? Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, last minute, it was a decision between my coach and I, and he said, like, why not? Let's just see what happens. You came this far, like, let's just do it,
Yeah. Well,
So,
what happened? And I want to ask you, who was coaching you? And it's not always, I was going to ask you what the progression of your weight was from the start until when you turned pro, because it might not be that different just because you probably added muscle and lost body fat from the beginning. So, but I'm kind of curious. And people should know,
so
you're like, what, 4'10"? How tall are you? I'm sorry.
I'm 4'11 3/4 unless I like shrink because, age and all that. Yeah, so I'm 4'11 3/4, almost 5 foot, not quite there. So my first coach, I used to live in Grand Rapids. That's like where I started my whole bodybuilding journey. It was in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And there wasn't really like that many coaches at the time. Bodybuilding, especially among women, was not very popular. Yeah. And I knew that being a first-time competitor, I'm like very much an all or nothing type of person. And if I'm going to do something, like I have to be like the best at it. Like there is like no in between for me. Like I'm literally like, I'm not doing it or I'm going to be the best. And so I knew, like, for me, I wanted like an in-person coach because I had no idea what I was doing. Like this was totally new to me, but I mean, I knew I wanted to be good at it. Like I'm not just going to like do it and not at least try my very best.
Yeah. You want to half-ass it. I got you.
Right. And so I hired, who was at the time the only like in-person female coach that I knew of at the time. And I actually was like at the gym training, and like when you're at you're at the gym, you get to know like people at the gym, you like make friends, and everyone's like, oh, like, do you compete? Like if you're not, like you should consider competing. And this girl came up to me and was like, hey, like, are you a competitor? Like you should consider competing. This is my coach. And it was actually a coach that I had been looking at. And so my coach at the time was Heather Cobb. I don't know if you're like familiar with her, but they had like a whole coaching team. Her and her husband had like a coaching team in Grand Rapids, and she was an in-person coach, and she did like posing, she did like diet, and you did like in-person training. So it was like a very hands-on method that at the time, being like a new competitor, not knowing anything about the sport, not knowing that much about online coaching, I thought that I really needed. And so that's how I started out. That was, she was my coach through the Great Lakes Ironman, and then like I don't know if you want to get into my like future competitive history like later on, but then I did the Michigan and then my first national show with her as well. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, like I realized more about the sport. I learned more about the sport, and I knew that like I needed someone that knew more about just competing and dieting in general to take me to the level that I wanted to get to. Because when I first started competing, it's like, you don't know what a national show is. Like, you don't know what being a pro is if it's not something that you've been involved in your whole life. And I mean, up until this point, I only lifted for a year before I started competing. So I didn't know any of this. And so when I started realizing the potential of the sport, that's when I knew like I needed to start taking things seriously. Yeah. So that was my very first coach. And then I kind of like moved on after that as I like took the sport more seriously, I guess.
So how did you find the next coaches? Was it all like word of mouth? Did somebody you admire recommend, or was it through social media?
So I had worked with Heather up until, so we worked together through, like I said, the Great Lakes Ironman, the Michigan, and then my first national show, which was Junior Nationals in 2016. So my first show was the Ironman, and like I said, it was like a last minute decision just to like try to see how I would do an open. And like fortunately, I did really, really well, even with my like horrendous posing. So I ended up taking first in all my divisions, and then I won overall. And then at that point, I was like, I love this. Like, I love this, and I want to see like how far I can go, which I didn't really know that much about. So then we had planned to do like I wanted to go to a national show at that point, but we wanted to do kind of like a warm-up show, a smaller show, just to see, because it's like, you did great one time. That doesn't mean you're gonna do great every time. And I think people are realizing that more, especially like as a pro. Like you can get like third call outs in one show and then literally get second place at the next show. Like just because you do well in one show doesn't mean you're gonna do well at the next one. And so we wanted to really make sure like I was a strong competitor before going to the national level. So we prepped me for the Michigan. I did the Michigan. I ended up winning overall at the Michigan. And then I think the timeline of the show is different than it is now. But I think junior nationals was then 4 weeks later. So I went to junior nationals 4 weeks later. And like going into it, my expectations were very low. I was like, I just kind of want to like go in, see like how I do. Like I've never been to a national show before. It's my third show. Like if I get last place, like I got work to do, And I ended up posing with Kenny Wallach.
Wow.
2 days. Yeah, I posed with Kenny Wallach in person. He was at USA Gym. I posed with him in person literally 48 hours before I stepped on stage, and he totally changed my posing routine. Like completely, like flipped it. Like we kept nothing the same, nothing. And he was like, you need to learn this in 48 hours. And I was like, okay, like you're the expert. Like if you say I got to learn it, like I'm going to learn it. And so I did, obviously, like to the best of my ability. Those stage shots are also a little, So I ended up actually getting 5th place in my class, which is really good for a first national show. And obviously, like probably wouldn't have been able to do that without him. Like he was a total game changer. And so at that point,
let me interject one thing. I just want to say, for those of you who don't know, so Kenny Wallach is like, he's just the man who knows posing. He does all the celebrity, all the pros. He does all the posing, and and he just knows. And the other thing I want to say is how important posing is, because you joke about your like even your first show, you could have looked better if your posing had. I think people think about hiring a coach for training or their diet especially, but they don't think about posing. And I mean, that needs to be worked on year round, and the criteria, you need to keep up with the ever evolving criteria of posing.
Well, and not only that, but like your physique changes as you continue to get leaner, and what looked well for you at the beginning of your prep might not look good for you now. And so it is an ever evolving process. And honestly, like that's one of my biggest hesitations in competing again, is that I feel like I'm very self-critical, and I feel like my front pose needs a lot of work, and I don't want to step on stage until like my front pose is perfect. And I'm even saying that as a pro. So like you said, posing is crucial. Like it's one of the biggest components to actually displaying a good physique on stage and doing well.
Well, if you've got 5 physiques that look on the pro level very similar, now what's going to change them is whose attention can get caught by the judges because it's best displayed. And
and one of my biggest things that I always tell posing clients is like, don't just throw a pose out there just because someone else is doing it. Like you need to present your best physique on stage at every single minute that you are on stage. So like my routine as a pro is very simple. Like you'll notice I don't do 6 front poses, and that's because there's only really one pose that looks great on my body. Why would I do 6 front poses just to do 6 front poses if it's going to take away from my physique and my placing? Like I'm going to nail the one pose that looks really, really great, and that's kind of where Kenny came into play. Like my front pose was like, I don't even know what I was doing, to be honest. It's pretty rough. And so he was like, what are you doing? Like nail this one front pose, you're good. And so we did that. And that's when I was like, okay, like I want to go as far as I can in this sport. And I think like maybe I have potential. So then going into 2017, like I really learned more about the sport. And that's when I was like, I want to go pro. And so I started working with Heather again. And at that point I was like considered a sponsored athlete. So like she was coaching me like just as an athlete. And her team got pretty big, and I knew that I needed someone that was more educated in the sport and that had more time to dedicate to me, because like I had high hopes and goals for the sport that I just didn't think I could accomplish while being like on that team. So my boyfriend at the time and a bunch of our friends worked with Scott, and I don't know that he'd had a bikini competitor before, but just like his like mentality and like his coaching style and you know, like his knowledge, I thought that he would be a really good fit. And so we started working together, and he's also a big fan of Kenny Wallach too. So like I'd already worked with Kenny Wallach, and he's like, you need to keep working with Kenny Wallach, like he's really great. And so he took me through my prep in 2017. And then that year I competed at Junior USA's and then Junior Nationals. And then I ended up going pro with Scott in Junior Nationals in 2017.
That's Scott McNally, for people who don't know who that is. And Scott is a coach here in Michigan. He also runs a huge network of podcasts, which you can find on YouTube. They're called Think Big. It's the Think Big Bodybuilding Network, and then Advices Radio is the podcast, but a ton of podcasts. And he's just
and the good thing, he has so many resources, and like he's good because he's like always on the pulse of bodybuilding, you know, and he's always like learning new things and, you know, all that. And so I mean, he turned me pro, so he obviously like knew what he was doing, you know. And so junior USA's, I ended up getting third, and at Junior USA's, I think only like the top 3 like in overall get their pro card. So even if you win your class at Junior USA's, that doesn't mean you're going to go pro. So I improved my placing from 5th place to 3rd place, and then at Junior Nationals I was like, I'm going pro. Like, not going pro is not an option, so we need to bring it. and so that prep was actually, peak week was really bad for that show. Actually, I think it ended up working in my favor. I came in way too lean for Junior USA's. And then for Junior Nationals, I started having like horrible digestive problems. Like, I don't know what happened. Peak week, I couldn't drink water, I couldn't eat, I couldn't do anything. And so like the days leading up to the show was like very stressful, because like we didn't really know like what my body was going to do, and it ended up working out because like I came in fuller, because like I was just holding on to a lot of water, all the issues I was having. But I ended up being like the look that they were going for, because I came in so lean before, and I worked with Kenny Wallach again before Junior Nationals that year, and he changed my posing again 48 hours before the show. But he changed my posing, and again, it was going to be a game changer, and I knew it was going to be a game changer. And so I just sucked it up, and I practiced my posing for hours and hours and hours. And I ended up placing like first in my class in Class A and getting my pro card at that show. But yeah, so
how much time was between? So it was between Junior Nationals and then USA's. That's what. Or was
I think it was 4 weeks again. I'm pretty sure it was 4 weeks, because I didn't have to lose weight. I had to maintain, and as a competitor, like, pretty tough. I mean, you know, like if you say like, you know, lose weight, okay, 4 weeks, like losing weight, like it's not easy per se, because you have to go through the hunger, the cardio, whatever. But it's like that's something you know how to manipulate. But it's like maintaining, like while being stressed out. Like, that's not easy, you know? And so that was like almost harder for me. And then like trying to gain weight too, you know, like as a competitor, you're supposed to be losing weight, not gaining weight. And someone tells you you have to go backwards, like really messes with your head, you know?
Yeah. And like a lot of people do that. They'll not get exactly where they want to be in a show. So then they'll hold, or maybe manipulate things a little bit. And then the next show isn't for another like 4 weeks or 6 weeks. That duration time between is that's what's very taxing on the body. It's not just
It is, yeah.
and reversing out. You're kind of like doing this limbo thing, this roller
Well,
coaster between shows.
I feel like sometimes like a peak week will push you into a fat loss phase as well. And so you asked about like my weight. So my first show, I mean, the criteria has obviously changed. So like muscle mass, level of leanness has changed over the years. I obviously wasn't as lean then as like you have to be now, especially at a pro level. And so I think my stage weight was at like 101 pounds my first show.
Okay.
My stage weight at junior nationals when I went pro was 89 pounds.
Holy cow. Holy cow.
89 pounds. Yeah. So
let's not forget that you're 4'11".
I'm 4'11". So like, and that's like totally depleted. And yeah. So
what do you
obviously
now?
So
now?
Right now, like my like average body weight now is like 110-ish is where I like sit. And then my last stage weight, which was the Powerhouse in 2019, my stage weight there was like 101. So I added a ton of muscle mass, and I was obviously way leaner. So I did like increase weight throughout the years. But yeah, 89 pounds. I was pretty little. Yeah.
I feel like this would be a really awesome Instagram, like a transformation, because your weight would be the same. You'd be 101 pounds, but first show till your last show. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like you can see, and I think just like the progression in the division, it's the same amongst every division, leaner and bigger.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like you kind of have to follow, you got to follow the trend if you want to do well. So I got leaner and bigger. So my weight, 89 pounds is very depleted, very, very, very depleted. That probably wasn't like my actual like sitting, walking around weight.
Sure.
And so I think along that, like I slowly downtrended that week, but I think I probably started the week at like 95 pounds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you think 95 to like 101, like that's not really like that big of a difference, you know, but it's the trend of the sport. You kind of gotta like go with it, you know? So
I feel like now, what they're really focused on is the level of leanness is almost the same between all of the divisions. It's just a matter of where the muscle is placed. Like it's really more focused on where the muscle is, you know?
Yeah. And I think that too, it's maybe the level of like muscle maturity too. Cause I feel like, especially with Miss Bikini Olympia that we have now, Issa is very, very muscular. She's very muscular. The thing is her posing and the way she presents herself on stage doesn't really show the level of leanness that she actually is at and how much muscle she really does have. And so I don't know if that's going to change. I feel like every year, like we're kind of just like waiting in limbo to like see, okay, what is the direction of the sport going to be? But I feel like that was kind of like my biggest struggle was they're really like in every division, like the difference between bikini and figure, I feel like especially in the past year has been so small. It's the posing, and like you'll notice that the muscle maturity in figure is like obviously more than it is in bikini. But it's like they still want almost the same look, the big shoulders, the tiny waist, the bigger lower body. They're really focused on like the tiny waist and like the X frame.
Yeah.
And so it's like you have to either like naturally have the genetics in that way, or you have to have more muscle mass. And so it's kind of like tricky finding like that balance, but
absolutely. Well, and then if you, like you said, so much can happen with the posing, because if you're too muscular, there's things that you can do to hide the parts that are too muscular, because you're not able to always just pull muscle away from some place or add it another place. So sometimes you have to learn how to hide body parts, you know, with your posing in order to present what they're looking for. Because I agree, Issa is she's very muscular.
She's very muscular, yeah.
You know,
but she has a tiny waist, And the posing obviously in bikini is so different from other divisions that you're able to get away with like more of a muscle mass with still looking like, if you pose as a bikini competitor, you're not going to look like you have as much muscle mass because you're not standing front on or doing the side pose as a figure competitor would do. Right. And so, I mean, I'm interested to see what happens. I've like kind of listened to like a couple other podcasts and just kind of like seen what other people think just the division of bikini is going. And it seemed like it kind of really peaked at a very high muscle mass last year, and that maybe they're not so much looking for that this year, but we'll see. I guess we'll find out next weekend, or this coming weekend, what the new standard is. But
and with them,
yeah, posing. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say with them throwing, now we have wellness this year, and then women's bodybuilding back into it, which will cause probably a shift, at least on the lower levels, maybe not on the Olympia level, but on the lower levels with women's. Mm-hmm. So everything's got to take a little it's got to take a little shift, because
yeah, for sure.
So that there's clear divisions between, all the categories.
Yeah, for sure. So, and like you said, obviously posing plays a huge role. And I know people ask me all the time, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you make this look this way? And it's right. People, I wish if there's anything that I can if there's any sort of education, any point anybody takes from anything I have to say is nail your posing, figure out your posing and figure out what looks best for you, because you don't have a small waist, posing can make you look like you have a small waist. If you don't have big shoulders, posing can make you look like you have big shoulders. It's such a game changer that I don't think that people spend enough time on. And if it's you diet this whole time, you pay all the money to do all this, you get a coach, you follow the diet, that's just the one thing that can really make sure that you you're bringing it, and it's it's not easy. Posing's not easy, but it's so important. And I just you gotta nail it, gotta nail it.
Yeah. And if you get your leanness to if you get to where you are going to be, as lean as you can, then it comes down to the presentation of what you're bringing.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
I feel like you got to find the people on Instagram who have the best selfies because they know how to pose.
I know that's the thing. People ask me all the time. They're like, "Oh my gosh, Amy, you look so great." I'm like, I don't look like this. I look like a box. Okay, it's all angles, people. It's all angles, and stage is the same way. It's just angles. It's literally presenting you present your best physique, and coming back for me, I would have to make sure that I'm better than I've ever been. And I know that my I've always been pretty good at posing. My stage presentation is pretty good because I danced for a long time, but you need a solid front pose. You just do. And I feel my front pose was never that solid. And so it's I never really invested in a consistent posing coach. I mean, I worked with Kenny Wallace. I worked with him for 48 hours before a show. I never had someone consistently looking at my posing, changing it for how my body changed. And I think that that's really important. So it's one thing that I would totally do differently is invest in a solid posing coach who can learn my body and figure out the best way that I can present my physique on stage, because it's a total game changer.
Yeah, it is. It's everything. If anything, that's cringy when you go to a show is when you see, especially people who actually look really good and you're like, what are you? No.
I know. Well, and I've now transitioned into a judging role in Michigan. Nice. So I'm a judge now for the shows in Michigan, and that's a really hard part for me. I mean, you don't get into the sport as deep as you and I have gotten by not being passionate about it, right? And so it's you see a physique on stage, and you're if you just knew how to pose, if you just did this or practice this, you can literally go from a second call out to a first call out just by improving your posing. And it kills me every time, it's it's so easy, but it's not so easy. You know what I mean?
Well, part of the issue is that it's an expensive sport and people don't know what they're investing in, so they cut corners. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And there's very few corners that you can cut if you want to learn how to do it correctly, you know? At least invest in someone that can teach you some things so that you can understand what to look for in yourself. But I don't, you know, I see that all the time. You know, John Jewett just did a video about traveling to the Olympia. And he said, you're going to travel to your show destination, get there a minimum of 3 days before your show. So your body has a chance to settle from this travel. And he's like, yeah, you're probably going to be spending a couple extra days at a hotel, but you just went through a 16-week prep. What is, you know, another $300 or $500 or whatever it is at this point? Like it's a very expensive sport. And I think people don't understand that, you know?
And that's, I think, like, what I always tell people is like, what do you want out of this sport? Like, what are you looking to gain out of this sport? Like, do you want to be the best, or are you doing it because it's a hobby? And at that point, then you have to decide how much time and money you're willing to invest in this sport. If you're just doing it because it's a hobby and you think it's fun, then don't pay for those extra days at a hotel. Don't pay to have a posing coach your whole prep. But if you're really trying to like get to the next level and be successful, like it's those little tiny details that people don't pay attention to that allow you to be successful. I mean, I'm like a crazy person. Like I'm neurotic. And so that's part of why like I'm taking the break that I am, because like I'm so crazy about this sport and I'm like such a perfectionist that it's like exhausting sometimes. Like it really like weighs on you mentally, trying to make sure all the pieces fall in line and that everything falls perfectly so that you do your best. And I just think that it doesn't really get talked about a whole lot. I think it's like getting like, I think that information is more out there now than it used to be, but it's like the little details that you don't think about that are so crucial to your success in this sport.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, and you know, people just kind of, they get into it like you did, where somebody at the gym will be like, hey, do you compete? You know, it's the difference between the people that are like, oh, bucket list, I'm going to give this a try. Usually somebody gets hooked and then they're like, oh my God, I love it. But then you have to, it's like, then it's getting better that's why it's bodybuilding, right? You're better every time. You don't want to show up show after show after show looking the same, or year after year.
Yes. And that's kind of like part of why I'm taking a break right now, is because, you know, I coached myself last year. I didn't have a posing coach. You know, I know what it takes to be successful in this sport. I've been successful in this sport, but I obviously, like, there's goals that I have. And I think that that's the beauty of bodybuilding too, is like, there's always more to achieve. Like you're always trying to like be better and achieve more. But at the same time, like being so self-critical, like kind of like weighs on you a little bit after a while. And I just think that like over time, it is a little bit, it's hard. The sport is like very like mentally challenging, and you do have to give it your all. And so like, obviously as the sport develops, like the sport has progressed to the point where there's so many people following it, and it's gotten to this level. Like, I mean, if you think about it, back in the day, people used to like they would compete in hotel rooms. Like they'd have a judging panel in a hotel room, and that's like your show. You're literally walking into a hotel room posing with hotel lights in like a bikini that you bought at Target, you know. To now it's this whole production, and it's like there's so much pressure, and like it's evolving so much that it's like, if you're not constantly showing up better, what are you doing? Yeah. And for me, like, how can I go from placing second place at multiple pro shows, just knowing that like maybe I am not going to bring a better physique, you know? And it's like, you're constantly trying to improve and do better. And it's like, if you're not going to bring better and you're not going to do better, then like, for me, and not everyone should have that mentality, and that's probably maybe an unhealthy mentality to have, but it's like, why show up if you're not going to like be better or do better than you did before? why keep showing up? And if you love this sport and you're just doing it because you love being in it, like that's fine. But I think in order to be successful at a certain level, you have to like winning.
Yeah.
I mean,
and everyone
you
that
know, and it's like if you,
yeah, I mean, everyone that I know who's on the pro level are, I guess, I mean, you'd call them obsessive. You have to be at
yeah,
this point
you
because
have to be.
it's all consuming in order, it is a whatever it takes mentality in order to not just to get to the pro level, but to compete on the pro level, because it's a whole, you know, anyone that I know who has gotten, it seems like gotten to the pro level, it's like you win, you get your pro card, and then your first pro show, dead last. You know what I mean? You're just, you're not on that. It's a whole new level and you got to step it up. And I know you had done 3 or 4 shows in a row trying to find the correct look until you, and then you were like, and you were like, okay, this is.
So
yeah.
Last year, like that was like really my goal. So like when I went pro in 2017, I competed as a pro in 2018, and I kind of just like wanted to do it, just like see what would happen. Obviously, I always want to bring my best, and I always give my all to everything that I do. And so like I didn't half-ass or anything like that, but it's like, did I have high expectations going into my first pro show? Like, absolutely not. You know, like I'm competing against people who go to the Olympia. Like, hi, I'm Amy from Michigan. Like, I just went pro. Like, I don't think that I'm going to be like top 10. You know what I mean? And so I just wanted to like do my best, show up my best, like do whatever, you know? And so like I ended up getting second, which was a surprise. I had no idea. But my feedback from that show was kind of just like, well, you know, just keep showing up.
Right.
Okay. No one knew me. That's fine. You don't know how to critique me because you never seen me before. Okay, that's fine. So then I go to the next show, and I'm a very small person just in general. And so, you know, my feedback was, well, you're just really small. Okay. So then going into 2019, I was like, I want to go to the Olympia. Like, I need to like get out there, and I need to like compete more, and I need to compete at the hard shows because I need to know what I need to do to be on that Olympia stage. And so I picked the Chicago Pro, I picked Tampa Pro, I picked Arizona Pro, and then of course I had to do powerhouses in Michigan. Like, how could I not, you know? But I picked those 3 shows because they're the biggest shows, and they have like the most prestigious judging panel. And I'm like, I want to get the best, most useful feedback that I can get as a pro, and then do that, because if I do that, then I'm going to be on that Olympia stage, you know? And so that was kind of my plan last year, was show up at the biggest shows with the best competitors, see how I do, and see how I can improve from there. The problem is that at the time in 2019, and like it's kind of gotten a little less, but the amount of muscle mass and the X shape that they wanted in order to be successful in bikini last year was so hard. I mean, it was so difficult. And I mean, I progressed. Like Chicago Pro, I placed 7th, and then Tampa Pro, I placed 6th, and then Arizona Pro, I got 7th, and then Powerhouse, I got 3rd. So I mean, my placing improved, but I mean, it's still like, it's just so challenging. And I remember at the last show, I mean, yeah, like I looked good, but I didn't have the physique that I wanted, that I felt was going to get me to the Olympia stage. That's why I got 3rd. You know, like I didn't have like that Olympia physique.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of like, you gotta like progress with the sport. And it's important that like I got in front of a different judging panel every time, you know, and it's, you gotta like take that critique, you gotta look where the sport is going. But I mean, it's hard. I mean,
yeah. So you were given these critiques by the judges, and what they say? Because your last competition was, what was that in 2019? What month was that?
That was September. So the Powerhouse Pro was, I think, like middle to end of September of 2019. So my critique at Chicago Pro, so being a blonde and being a blonde bikini competitor is very tricky. I think that the general like bikini division, they like a more like natural look, like I just stepped off the beach, you know, and it's like blondes don't naturally come across as a natural look, you know, like how many people are naturally blonde? Not that many. And so, and being blonde creates a harsher look on stage. I mean, that was like my critique at junior nationals the first year. My hair was too blonde, and it was. I mean, I literally looked like I had a light bulb on my head, you know? And so it's hard being a blonde because it definitely changes the way your physique looks on stage. So like for me, it was a combination of I wasn't lean enough and my hair was really blonde and my tan wasn't dark enough to contrast the blondness and how much light was being like shed on my body from the light from my head. And so Chicago Pro, I was like in top 4, I think, until we turned around. When we turned around, all my hair is to the back, so it casts so much light in combination with not being lean. And like, you know, a gluteum tie-in is literally like what wins bikini shows, you know? And so I had none. I got totally washed out on stage, and then I got moved up to 7, and that's where I stayed. And so my critique at that show was just come in leaner. So then Tampa Pro, I think personally was my best look last year. It's like every picture I have like leading up to me getting on stage, it was like there, but the same thing happened. I was literally in center stage until we turned around. Like people were moving around on either side of me from the front, but the second we turned around from the back, when my blonde hair mixed with my tan, I got totally washed out. You couldn't see gluteum tying at all. So at that point, again, my feedback was get leaner, but that wasn't the issue. It was just that I didn't know how to balance my hair color with the tan. That was the issue. But because of that, I got leaner. And then what ended up happening is my shoulder size ended up decreasing throughout the shows. And then that obviously didn't create like the V taper that we were looking for. So if you look, as I progressed throughout 2019, my shoulders got smaller. As a result of trying to get leaner. So that ended up being my feedback at basically every show after that was grow your upper body so that, you know, you have a smaller appearing waist.
Well, and this is something that people would know. I mean, it makes sense when you say it, but as a female trying to get leaner, we tend to hold our fat in our lower half. So as we do that, you tend to shrink your upper body almost too much, trying to get your lower half lean enough. And then from one show to the next, that holding that we had talked about, your body will catabolize and you do end up losing muscle trying to hold.
Yeah.
Which, I mean,
and like for me, like I had, when I first started lifting, I think that's also kind of what drew me to competing is I wanted really big shoulders. Like I like really wanted like the cap shoulders. And so when I first started training, I'm doing like super high volume and it's like getting 2 rotator cuff injuries. And I'm like the type of person, I'm like, I'm fine, it's fine, it's fine. So of course I never did anything about it. I trained through it. I kept training through it. And then over time, and now I'm like fixing it now, obviously 5 years later, but I wasn't able to actually like train how I needed to keep my shoulder size. And so I was dealing with so much shoulder pain. There's so much scar tissue in my shoulder joint. I had no shoulder activation. I mean, I'm literally just like lifting, like I was just like lifting weights, like not feeling anything. And then of course you combine that with like losing weight, decreasing calories, your muscle mass is going to go down anyway. And then not dealing with like proper muscle activation, it just ended up leading to like just my upper body just like totally atrophying, you know? And that's kind of where I'm at now. So it's hard for me to say I want to get back on stage when I can't bring the physique that they told me I need to bring to do better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This one of the things I was going to add to, this is what maybe people don't always understand either. This is why people use steroids, especially towards the tail end of their competition prep, because it helps you hold on to that muscle. So while you're dieting, you're not losing nearly as much muscle. But I mean, obviously, that's with the holding and everything else. I know with me doing 3 shows in a row in 2014, I just kept end up kind of skinny soft by the last one because your body's just going, what the heck are you doing? You know, it's
and I feel like sometimes as you keep competing, instead of your body saying like, stop, your body just keeps losing and losing and losing and losing. And it's like, you can't get back. Like, it doesn't matter how much food you get, your body is just like so catabolic at that point that it doesn't matter how much you feed it. You just keep losing and losing and losing. And of course, muscle mass is going to go along with that. And I mean, you can see it in my progression from the first show to the last one, how much muscle mass I really did lose in my upper body because of that, but also because of just the injuries that I had too, you know?
Yeah. So this was supposed to be a building year for you, or a growing year. So tell us a little bit about what was going on during the pandemic for you, because it was a shit show for me.
Yeah. I mean, I like seriously commend every competitor who like kept prepping, showed up this year. I mean, that I can't even imagine like the amount of just like dedication and hard work that it took to like push through just everything we've gone through this year, and like to just keep showing up. Like, I mean, that's like, gotta give him a hand, you know? I don't know if I could do that. I mean, I don't know. So like this year was meant to be like a break. I didn't know if I was going to take the full year off, but I did know like I wanted to move downtown and I wanted to do like all these things, and I wasn't really going to put any pressure on myself. Like if I wanted to compete, I was going to make it work. If I didn't want to, like, you know, I'm 30, I'm going to be 32. Like the stage is going to be there for a while. Like if I want to take some time off, like I'm not going to just totally stop training. Like, you know, I love it. I'm going to keep it up. So it's like, you know, and so obviously things didn't go according to plan. So like obviously COVID happened in March, kind of put like a damper on the whole going to the gym thing here in Michigan for a long time. So I like resorted to a lot of like home workouts, which I mean, I don't know if you had this issue, but like getting gym equipment was like not a thing. Like you couldn't. And so I had like a set of like 8-pound dumbbells and some resistance bands.
You know, I had to go back to my original lifting equipment, which was the dumbbells that have the screw on, so you could add like the like I had that in the easy bar. I hate bands. I personally hate
I do too.
With bands.
And like here, I'm sorry, but like, can someone send me like an efficient back workout with bands, because I like can't.
That was the
like,
worst.
How do you train back with bands? Like,
because you can bend over and do rows, but the strength curve is so bizarre with the stretchiness. That it's like doing, you know, like
like there's no like constant tension there. Like I'm like I don't know. Like it just didn't feel like I was doing anything. So I mean, I did it.
Right.
But the problem is that when your feedback is to gain more muscle and you're trying to like do that with like subpar equipment and working out and doing subpar exercises, that's like not really possible. And so I just kind of had to like accept that that's what was going to happen. Like I was either going to maintain or lose some muscle mass this year. And I mean, I could do my very best to maintain what I could, and like I did. And I ended up, for a portion of the year, I lived with my parents because they were like, I was living by myself, and they're like, Amy, you're going to go crazy living alone. Like, you should come stay with us so that you don't lose your mind. So I'm like, okay. And they had like a gym in the basement and stuff like that. So like I was able to do a little bit more, but I mean, I really still did like dumbbell workouts and resistance bands. So like my lower body is pretty much stayed the same. I actually somehow managed to put a half an inch on my glutes somehow. Like, very proud of that. I don't know how I did it, but my upper body obviously just kind of gone here. And so then moving downtown, not like the most convenient thing for like a bodybuilding lifestyle. I mean, I don't have a gym that I can like get to easily. Okay. I don't park in my building, so I have to like walk a block and a half to my car to then drive a half hour to the gym.
Oh, wow.
And then they closed my apartment gym because of COVID. So like I actually picked an apartment that had a gym in it, so that I'm like, well, the snow, walking, it's not an excuse. I have a gym. Well, they closed it. So that's kind of been like my biggest struggle, is like, yes, I wanted to live downtown to like live like the downtown fun lifestyle. Plus I work downtown too. But it definitely has like created obstacles with the gym and then COVID in general. I don't think it would be that big of an issue had my apartment gym stayed open, but I mean, like right now I have a set of adjustable dumbbells, some resistance bands, and a treadmill, and then like my gym that's 30 minutes away. So
how far are you from Scott McNally's home gym?
yes. So I'm 25 minutes away from Scott's home gym. It was actually really fun. We trained glutes together, not last weekend, but the weekend before that. Mm-hmm. And we trained glutes. He has a pretty sick home gym setup. And I asked him, you know, what are you doing this just because of COVID? Because, you know, it's harder for you to get to the gym, or like, is this kind of like your long-term plan? And he's like, I love this. Like, this is great. Like, I'm going to keep doing this. And he's got like a really solid set of equipment. I mean, his dumbbells go up past like most gyms I've been to. And so we've talked about like definitely doing some more like training sessions. And like, I've had some like issue, like I got this back issue I got going on that I'm going to a chiropractor for. He's like working on my shoulders. So I'm like kind of at the tail end of that, thankfully. And so him and I have talked about like training together a lot more. And Scott's just like an awesome dude to train with. Like, he's got so much knowledge and he likes doing like really cool different things. So yeah, that's kind of like my gym situation now. It's not ideal. Like, let me tell you, living downtown is like not conducive to a bodybuilding lifestyle. I definitely have to like be determined.
Yeah.
You know, motivation is not always there. You have to like really be determined.
It's fair, because I feel like a lot of the people that I talked to who even had gym equipment at home were like not motivated during, it just was was pressing time. So, but the back workout was the worst, because I was searching high.
Yes.
You can't, if you don't have cables or machines, like, it is really hard. You can do a bent over row if you have a heavy enough dumbbell, but otherwise nothing. No sort of lat downs.
You can see it, but that's like a pole right here that goes from like the ceiling to the floor. Okay. I can attach a resistance band to that, but like if you don't get it at like the right thing for like a pull down, it's like it doesn't do anything. And then I remember at one point trying to wrap a resistance band around a door and then like using it as a pull down, and it like smacked me in the face. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done. Like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. Like, I'll just figure it out next year. So, and I think, like, I follow like a lot of bikini coaches who coach a lot of pros, and one of them, James Atlas, Team Atlas, I don't know, like, you're familiar with him, but even he was like, this is not your year to improve. Like, if you don't have the ability to like still go to the gym, which like in Michigan, we had some options, but like the gyms that were still open were so packed. I mean, like, I still went to the gym, even though like we weren't supposed to. Like, I still did go to the gyms that were open who weren't supposed to be open, but you couldn't do anything. I mean, like, you're just standing there, just like waiting for something to be open. And so it's like, he like, it's like, this is your year to maintain. Like, and I already kind of plan on taking this year off. So,
or it's your year to focus on something else. You know what I mean? Like, just, you know, focus on something else. You know, I did other things with my work. You know,
and I think like being the type of person that I am, like, I'm very like success motivated. Like, I like to do well, and I'm an all or nothing type of person. And coaching myself and posing myself for so long, like, it starts to like eat at you mentally. And I think like sometimes you just need to take a step back, and instead of focusing so much on like what you're lacking, or like, because that's what a lot of like competing is. Like, you look and you take your check-in photos, and you're like, my shoulders need to be bigger, my glutes need to be bigger, I need to be leaner. You know, it's like you get in this mentality of like what you don't have, and it's so hard on you after a while. And I've always been someone that's so self-critical of myself, and I have very high expectations of myself. And obviously that's how I've gotten successful. You can't get successful without that. But I mean, it takes away from your like mental health after a while. And like, that was like the biggest reason why I took some time off, just because I just knew that like, if I ever want to have longevity in this sport, like, my mental health like needs to be there. And it just wasn't. Like, I was so self-critical, and it's like, you can't continue to improve once you like cross the line of being like self-critical to like a deterioration standpoint. And that's kind of like where I was. And so like I needed this time to take a step back, focus on like really getting my mental health better and accepting like my body for how it is. And if it gets better, great. And if it doesn't, like it doesn't, you know? And so like this year was a blessing in disguise, and that it kind of forced me to do that. That being said, you know, I have some injuries. I mean, my back is actually not an injury. I thought it was. Turns out like I just have a curved spine, which is like a chronic issue that's going to be really fun for me to deal with for the rest of my life. But it's kind of created an issue with training. And so like I'm now dealing with that. So like hopefully now things like I just got permission to train back again for like the first week in probably 3 months. So like celebrating that. But I'm hoping next year I can like really get back and build the muscle that's like necessary to actually like still be like a competitive force in the bodybuilding industry.
Yeah.
Because
it sounds like you have to get your environment set up for it first. And I love that you've had a change of your mindset, because you're right. If it is deteriorating, if you can't focus on what you have, like you needed to just like, you know what, I was so focused on what was missing. I need to focus on what I have, which is a lot of blessings and in an environment that you got to figure out how you're going to set up if you're going to be consistent with things. And that you
that is consistency, you know, it's like the biggest thing with like competing. And like I'm working from home now. Like we're going to go back to the office eventually. We don't know when. And so it's like, you think that it'd be easier working from home, like trying to follow like a healthier lifestyle. But when you're so like, I've always had like a 9 to 5, or I've been in school. So it's like me sitting like at home for long periods of time is like, and it's not a thing. Like, I don't know, like this is a whole different world for me. And so it's like, I find that I just sit there and I work all day. And then I like look at the clock and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 3:30 and I haven't eaten all day, you know? And it's like, you're used to like meal prepping because you're like on the go, eating out of Tupperware. Like that's how it is. Like when you're a competitor, and it's like when you're home, you don't necessarily need to do that because you think in your head, oh, well, I'll just like make some food. Like I'll make lunch. I'll make meal 3 when I need meal 3. And then it's like, you get so caught up in working that you don't. And I know like a lot of people in the fitness industry are used to that. Like they're used to like working from home, making their own schedule. And I know that like they probably went through an adjustment period too. And I feel like that's kind of like where I'm at. Like I'm trying to figure out how like bodybuilding still like fits in with like this huge change in my life that's obviously temporary, but it's been an interesting thing to like navigate through right now. So.
I agree with that. I mean, my prep was when I was working for somebody else, and it was, I'd pack all my meals. I'd eat my breakfast, like my oatmeal in the car on the way to work. And then I would, you know, I was working for another cleaning company, and between houses, I would throw down a meal before I would go back in.
Yeah.
Occasionally have a chicken breast in my pocket.
You know? Like in your little like Ziploc bag, you're like eating like cold chicken out of like a Ziploc bag. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know. So, but you're right. You're home. You're like, oh, why would I meal prep when I can make my and it doesn't.
It's like it's an easy thing to like realize that you have to do, but then it's like for me, like I just get so focused on like working and like doing this that like I don't like think to take the time to stop and actually do that. And it's like I don't even know if I like had meal prepped, if I would even be like to stop to take the time to actually like microwave one and eat one, just because this is so not something that I'm used to, and not something that I ever thought that. I mean, it's been amazing. I mean, I never thought I'd be able to spend so much time with my dog in my life, but like I never thought like. How many pharmacists actually get to work from home? I mean, it's not something that you think that you're going to get to do as a pharmacist. And so, and on top of that, it's like no one knew how long COVID was going to last. So I'm sitting here thinking like, oh, I only have to do this for like 2 more months, like whatever. I'll get my shit together in 2 months, whatever. And then it's like, oh no, like we're going to just keep doing this forever. Like that's okay, great. You know?
Well, and what it comes down to is effort. Like I feel like too, I'd put the effort in there if I knew it was 100% going to go somewhere, but I'm not really sure where things are going. Like you said, I commend the people that continued to prep, or their show disappeared or got moved or whatever. I mean, you're way stronger than me. I am not going to invest in, I wouldn't invest in something that I wasn't 100% sure was going to happen. Because prep is grueling.
It is. I know. Like, that's why I'm like here doing, like, it's hard. Like, I needed a break. Like, it's exhausting. If it was easy, I feel like more people would do it, you know, like if being healthy and fitness is easy.
Yeah.
More people. It's not easy. It's hard.
Yeah. Well, and how many people out of their shows? I mean, you know, like they get ready to, like, I remember at my gym, I bet you 75% of the people who started a prep wouldn't finish to go into a show.
Well, yeah. And I mean, you have that anyway, and then pair that now with like, especially, I don't know, obviously like every state handled things differently, but in Michigan, it was like, you never really knew what was going to happen. Like, you could be in the gym one week and then things would be shut down the next week. And so it's like, you had no idea, like at any point what was going to happen. And so, and same with shows. It's like, if you can't find a venue for the show, it's going to be canceled. And so it's like, you just spent 6 months prepping for a show that got canceled. And it's like, unless you're training and prepping because you just like love the process, which everybody should. I mean, no competitor is going to be able to sustain competing in this sport if you don't love the process. And again, that's like why I'm taking a break. I fell out of love with the process, and I'm not going to put myself through this shit if I don't enjoy it, like just for the end goal of being on stage, like no. And so I think like it was really hard for a lot of people to keep going. And I mean, the people that did, wow. And like, I was talking to one of my friends and I was like, you know, if I was in prep, like it took like getting this place together and like getting moving and all that, it was a struggle and it cost me a lot of money. And I put a lot of effort and time into this. I probably wouldn't have done any of it if I was in prep. I probably would have somehow invested in like a home gym. You know what I mean? It's like the amount of like money and sacrifices that people had to make just to like keep their preps going. Like, good for you. Like, I mean, that's like incredible. But like, I feel like I probably would have done those things, and like, who knows if that would have even been like a good call for me, like financially, life-wise, like, because when you're in it and you've already invested so much time into a prep, like you don't want to stop, you know, like I had bilateral hamstring strains like before the Arizona Pro, and I kept deadlifting anyway, and I couldn't even feel my hamstrings. Like, as a competitor, like you get like tunnel vision, like nothing else matters, you know? So it's like, I just think like how different my life would be right now if I decided to like push through it. I'd probably be living in a storage unit on a mattress in a gym like that I built, you know what I mean? Like,
but you're not have a lovely apartment with your tree.
With my tree, like this is supposed to be a 4-foot tree. I'm pretty sure this tree is 3 feet, but you know, Amazon happens, you know. Here we are.
Yeah. So it was good. I mean, I think that's the important part of it too, is that you made a wise decision at the beginning that you were not going to invest and you were going to invest in other things, and you found, you know, a different path, because I don't think I could have invested in the unknown like that.
I know. And like, I like to think I'm like a very calculated person, and I overthink like probably to the extreme, but I think this is probably the best move for me life-wise and competition-wise this year. The uncertainty, I think, like probably would have thrown me for a lot of loops, and I don't know where I would be mentally at this point this year had I chose to try to still compete through it. And I mean, that's not just like, I'm not saying that like I'm never going to come back. Like, I'm not saying like, you know, like I still, obviously I love training. I still train. Like I'm going to the chiropractor and like dedicating all this time and money to this because I want to get back to it. Like I want to do this. It's just, you know, like sometimes you just gotta take a step back. And I've had like, you know, a lot of people on social media like saying like, you know, are you afraid that you're not going to be relevant anymore and you come back? Like, are you afraid for taking time off? Like, what if you come back? The judges are going to notice that and they're going to be disappointed. And it's like, listen, if I'm going to step on stage, I'm going to be undeniably better than I ever was.
Yeah.
And like, that's a guarantee. My placing may not reflect that, but I know that if I ever step on stage again, it's going to be with the best package I've ever had. Yeah. And so it's like, no, like I'm not worried about the judges being like, oh, where'd she go? Like, oh, like that's bad. Like we're not going to like place her where she should because she took a year off. No. Right. I'm going to come back. I'm coming back.
Right.
And like, that's not going to be an issue, you know? And it's like, I've stayed active in the sport. Like that's not a concern of mine. Like, and you know, like if I'm going to come back and I'm going to be like, you know, we'll see how the sport like develops, but it's not like I've been out for that long. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no. And a lot of people did different things this year. I don't think they're looking for like who was here in 2019, who's not here. You know, they're doing what they do. They judge the people that are in front of them. And, you know, next year there'll probably be a whole plethora of people that are coming back and there'll be new people. And it's just, you know,
it's an ever evolving sport and there's so many of us. And that's not to say that like going pro is easy because it's not, but I mean, there are a lot of pros and everything's always changing. And so it's like,
yeah,
you know, the judges know who I am. They've seen me multiple times. They know I'm a good athlete. They know I'm a good competitor. And so it's like, okay, you know, if I show up and I'm good, then that's all there is to it, you know, like.
So the last question that I have for you then is, are you going to change your hair color?
You know, I don't. I think so. Actually, I am a natural blonde. So I don't know if you can like see these eyebrows. These are like actually colored in. So like my eyebrows are like blonde. Like I am a blonde. Like this like grow out here, my natural hair. So I've gone brunette before. I've gone red before. I just don't think it's a good look on me. And so what I did to kind of like combat that a little bit is I did go like a little bit darker. I went like a more like caramel color. And that's what I tell like a lot of like competitors is like, if you're going to be blonde, like that's fine. But if you want to do well in this sport, you kind of gotta like, you know, you got to kind of confine to like what the sport wants you to do. And it's, I mean, look at the top 5. How many blondes are there really? You know, and it's not necessarily to say that they don't like blondes. That's not the case. It's just that blonde hair, tan suits, they come across different on stage. That's just a fact. So the way I've kind of combated that is I've done like more like a balayage type of thing. So I do like a darker root. I do like low lights type of thing. I'm like maybe thinking about going more to like the caramel blonde route. Right. But I will always be a blonde.
Yeah.
Always. I am a blonde. And I think that it gives, I've gotten like messages from girls saying like, you know, it's nice to have a blonde up there. Like it's nice to have like a blonde powerhouse on that stage, you know, and it's like, maybe I can serve as motivation to other girls who are blonde. I don't want to not be blonde anymore. I don't know. So I am a blonde personality wise, and we're just going to keep it that way, I think.
That'll be good. So, well, I hope that you have a really great Christmas. Are you going to go spend it with your parents then, or?
Yeah, I am. So we're gonna do. We normally do like a big like extended family type of thing. We're not doing that this year. It's just gonna be like my parents and my brother, sister-in-law, my niece, and me. And we're just gonna like do some apps, open up some gifts, like keep it pretty chill. So yeah, kind of. Christmas is going to be different this year. What about you? What are you doing this year?
You know, it's really funny because I actually spent Thanksgiving with my ex-husband and his family and my daughter. She usually goes, you know, she alternates between, but like I can't go visit my family because my dad has Parkinson's and my brother, he has a kidney transplant and he lives with my parents, so I can't even go. Yeah.
Yeah, immunocompromised. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. So I'm not really sure. It's funny because I usually spend Christmas by myself because my family, we get together with my family Christmas Eve, and then Anna goes to her dad's side on Christmas Day. That's how it's always been.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, the gyms are open at least. I usually go to the gym on Christmas, which is
I do too. I'm like, I always train legs on Christmas, like always.
Maybe I'll find you and we can.
Yeah. We'll get a leg workout. Yeah, because like we're doing like a super late Christmas, I think. So yeah, I'm like, I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting year this year. I'm open for sure.
You know, if somebody wants to, I'm available.
Right? I know. My mom like just sent us like the menu today, and she's like, I think we have enough food. I'm like, yeah, we do too. There's like not that many of us, but we're doing our best. I mean, Thanksgiving was kind of the same way. It was just my parents and I. Like, yeah, you know, you gotta kind of flow with it. This year, it's all about flexibility. You know, we kind of just gotta go with it.
And however, I always tell people, however you handled it is exactly how you were supposed to handle it, because, you know, because it was crazy, just crazy.
I know, unprecedented times. Whoever thought we would be in quarantine in a pandemic from like a freaking microorganism? I mean, who would thought?
I know, it's crazy.
It is crazy.
All right. Well, did you train today?
No. I did cardio this morning. So right now my chiropractor he told me initially I could choose either between legs or glutes, not both. I had to pick the one that was like less impactful on my back. And so I can do shoulders because we're working to reduce the scar tissue in my shoulders, which has been a total game changer. And then Scott McNally was so nice and showed me some like mobility exercises, because like all that stuff like really overwhelms me. Like thinking about like recovery techniques, like all that, it's just like there's a lot, and it's like, how do you have time in a day to like do all of this? Like, I don't know. And so he showed me like a couple of things like here and there. So that like in combination with like the kinesiology we're doing with chiropractic is like really helping my shoulders. So still training shoulders at least once a week. And then I'm training glutes right now. And then he told me I can start training back. I just can't do like certain exercises. So I did shoulders, chest yesterday. Today was just cardio. Tomorrow's glutes. And then I think Saturday's going to be back for the first time in like 2 months. So
exciting. I tell you, during the pandemic, there was a time where I was like, I would give my left foot to do a lat pull down. Just somebody, it's like, you can't mimic it at all.
No. And that's one of the things I was like really sad about yesterday. So I haven't had back pain in probably about a week. So I asked him, like, can I start training back now? And he was like, yeah, like you can, but like, don't do this, this, and this. And he's like, how do you normally do a lat pull down? I'm like this. He's like, you can't do that. So the only way I have to do like a modified lat pull down even. So I have to like do a lat pull down like this.
Like a chin up.
That's all I got. Yeah, right now. So I can't even do a lat pull down. We'll get there though. There.
You will work through it all. And I understand the recovery stuff is it's overwhelming trying to compartmentalize all of the exercises that you could or should be doing.
Yeah.
Maybe this will help. And it's hard to know which ones are helping, and you want to kind of do them all, but then you don't do them all because it takes so much time.
Yes. And then it's like, oh, you got to do them. Like, I remember I was going to physical therapy at the end of last year, and I was like working with my hip flexors and my hamstrings. Like I said, I had bilateral hamstring strains. Yeah. And he's like, oh, you need to do all this stuff twice a day. I'm like, I have a job. Like, I have to go to the gym. I have to drive. Like, when am I going to do all of, and you have to like hold them all for certain periods of time. And I'm like, if someone could give me like 6 extra hours in a day, like for sure. Yeah. Like I can do this. It's like, and you know, and it's like, you want to work on multiple areas at one time. So it's like, yeah, my shoulders need work, but so do my hip flexors and my hamstrings. So it's like, by the end of it, you're like stretching for like 2 hours a day, and you're like, I don't have time for this.
I know. Yeah. You get exhausted after just doing like your morning. You're like, I just did a workout doing all my Yeah, because I was working through shoulder and knee at the same time
Yeah.
in the last few months. So yeah, it sucks, but you know what? We're doing it.
Yeah, and it's, you know, like it's definitely necessary for the longevity of the sport. It's not something that I prioritized before, but you know, just going through everything that I have now, like I definitely realize the importance of it. And you don't necessarily need to do all of it every day and all the time, but if you're doing just like something, you know, so it's like, you know, I do shoulder mobility like 3 times a week. Okay, it's better than nothing. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of.
Yeah, my PT said to me, because I was like, I'm not sure when to fit in all these exercises with my workouts too. And she's like, you know, do your leg exercise, you know, just do them when you do your leg day. Like, she's like, even if you're only doing them once, if you're stressing about doing it and then you don't do it at all because you're stressed about it.
And that's what happened to me. Yes. I got so overwhelmed that I was like, I'm not doing any of it. And then like, here I am, like broken. So do your recovery, pose and do your recovery if you listen to me at all. Like, do those things.
So in theory, Amy says,
practice your posing and do your recovery.
Good advice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've been on here a long time, so I'm gonna wrap it up. But yeah, I know we'll definitely have you on again, especially you know, if you start, you know, getting back into prep or deciding on a show or
for sure.
How things are going. But yeah, I know.
Well, thank you for having me on. It was really fun. It was good to see you and talk to you again.
No, it's good to see you too. And maybe I'll see you at one of the shows coming up this next year. Hopefully nothing in Michigan will get canceled too much, but
I know, hopefully not. Well, you know, hopefully I'll be there in my official judge's polo. That's like so attractive. Yeah. So hopefully I'll be there. I'm really looking forward to, you know, being part of the bodybuilding industry in more ways than just being a competitor. So I'm really excited about taking on a judging role too. So it'll be fun to see like how that all progresses and comes together in the next like year or so. So
well, I think it, like you said, it's a great way to get yourself still involved in the sport and everything. I did judging in 2015 when I tore my rotator cuff because I knew I wasn't going to really be doing anything in the gym.
Yeah.
You know, so it was a good way to stay involved still.
Yeah, and it definitely gives you a different perspective on the sport too. I feel like I've learned a lot about competing like through judging too. So it'd be fun to implement that as a competitor as well.
I love having a female judge on the panel too, more female judges, because they're more in tune with what's going on with the women's divisions. And I bet your feedback is amazing too. That's something I tell people. If you can get judges' feedback, like get somebody's email. I was like, send me your pictures. I will give you feedback 100%. You know?
Oh yeah, like I mean, I had competitors reaching out to me after, because I judged a couple shows this year, and then they'd send me their pictures, and I'm like saving them on my phone. I'm like circling things, sending back, and I'm like, you know, if you could just like tweak this, tweak that posing, like totally game changer. You know, like I love it. It's been so much fun so far. So really looking forward to like getting more involved in that way.
That's awesome. Well, maybe we could do a competitor show next year, and you know, you can talk about the upcoming shows and put yourself out there a little bit more so people can contact you, especially competing in Michigan if they help. So
for sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Well, for myself and Amy, I'm gonna say let's see. Oh, I have to say disclaimer that this show is for entertainment purposes only, and anything that you have heard on here, if it maybe applies to you, you should go talk to a doctor. And that's pretty good to remember that healthy looks different on everybody. IFBB Pro Amy Landry, thank you so much for being on the show. And
thank you for having me.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.